On the evening of October 21, 2018, 24-year-old Toya Jade Cordingley went to Wanger Beach, a secluded stretch of coastline situated between Cairns and Port Douglas in Queensland, Australia. Earlier that day, she had been caring for a dog named India, which belonged to her boyfriend. As sunset approached, Toya reached the beach, parked her dark-colored Mitsubishi Lancer, took hold of India's leash, and began walking along the shore. Although no one directly witnessed her walk, her presence was later confirmed through phone location data and physical evidence recovered from the area. By the following morning, Toya's car remained parked at the beach entrance. An immediate indication that something was wrong. India was discovered first, tied securely to a tree near the parking area. The leash was fastened in a deliberate manner, suggesting the dog had been left there intentionally to be found. India showed no signs of injury, but the situation was unsettling. Inside the vehicle, Tanya's personal items, including her wallet, were located, but her phone was nowhere to be found. When Toya failed to return home that night and did not answer calls or messages, concern among her loved ones quickly grew. Her mother and friends spent the night attempting to contact her without success. And on the morning of October 22nd, they traveled to Wanger Beach to search for her. It soon became evident that Toya had not simply walked away from her abandoned car. The tied dog and her complete lack of contact strongly suggested a serious situation. Wanger Beach is remote and untamed with no street lights and the closest homes located miles away, making searches at night especially challenging. By the morning of October 22nd, dozens of people had assembled at the beach. Toya's family, friends, and concerned community members quickly organized a search. Groups formed on their own, without waiting for official instructions, and volunteers manually searched the shoreline, sand dunes, nearby paths, and surrounding brush. A heavy sense of urgency and fear filled the area as it was clear this was not a simple case of someone getting lost. Toya's father, Troy Cordingley, had been assisting with the search since the early hours of that morning. At one point, Troy separated from the others and headed toward an area where the beach gave way to scrubland. There, he noticed sand that appeared disturbed. As he moved closer and cleared it away with his hands, he uncovered the body of a young woman. It was his daughter. Toya's body was found lying on her side, partially buried beneath the sand. She was unclothed and her personal items were missing. There were visible signs of trauma, including bruises, abrasions, and evidence that she had been overpowered. No nearby objects were discovered that could account for what had occurred, indicating deliberate efforts to conceal the crime. Law enforcement swiftly cordoned off the scene, and initial forensic work began. At once, investigators recorded footprints in the sand, examined the surrounding area, and questioned anyone who may have seen Toya the previous day. One significant detail was the absence of drag marks near the location, strongly indicating that the crime occurred close to where the body was. Found. This suggested the perpetrator had either been waiting nearby or encountered her by chance. An official report of a violent crime was filed and the process of collecting physical evidence began. Investigators gathered sand samples, footwear impressions, and biological material from an area extending roughly 160 feet based on the condition of the scene. Authorities suspected the act involved deliberate violence, though this theory was not immediately shared with the public. News of the incident spread rapidly through the community, with local media reporting the tragic death of a young woman at a remote beach, raising alarm throughout the Cairns region. Many women grew reluctant to go out walking alone. Authorities publicly pledged to use every available resource to identify the person responsible and ensure justice was carried out. Police began reviewing surveillance footage from highway cameras, shopping centers, and other public locations to retrace Toya's movements during the final hours of her life. At the same time, DNA samples were collected to compare with evidence recovered from the scene. Toya's body was taken to Brisbane for a comprehensive forensic examination. Investigators sought to establish the precise cause and time of death, as well as determine whether there were indications of targeted violence. From that point forward, the investigation was handled by detectives, forensic specialists, and medical examiners. Toya Jade Cordingley was born in 1994 and lived in Cairns, a city in northeastern Australia. She was raised in a loving household by her father Troy Cordingley and her mother Vanessa. From an early age, Toya displayed a deep compassion for both people and animals. She attended local schools and later completed a pharmaceutical program, working in a pharmacy. Despite her busy schedule, she always made time to help animals. Toya volunteered at the Paws and Claws Animal Shelter, where she assisted with animal care, walked dogs, and maintained the facility. Those who worked with her recalled her strong commitment. She rarely missed a shift and would often return in the evenings to tend to a sick puppy or feed the animals. Her passion for animal welfare went well beyond volunteering. She advocated for their protection, supported spaying and neutering, spoke out against cruelty, and promoted adopting from shelters. At the time of her death, Toya was in a relationship with Marco Hines, with whom she lived. To those who knew them, they seemed like a close and affectionate couple. They spent weekends together, enjoyed nature trips, and frequently shared photos on social media. Their relationship appeared stable, although after the incident, some of Toya's close friends disclosed that she had been having doubts and was considering taking a break. These conversations only became known after the tragedy. Marco worked in retail and was connected to the Cairns nightlife scene, socializing with a wide range of people. He was described as impulsive, though this trait did not raise concern until after Toya's disappearance. Investigators would later examine his actions on the day she went missing, but in the early stages of the investigation, few details about their relationship were publicly disclosed. In The weeks before the incident, Toya remained active on social media. She frequently shared photos of animals, posted updates about new arrivals at the shelter, and highlighted positive rescue stories. Her words, "You can't be kind halfway, and loving animals isn't a hobby. It's a way of life," gained widespread attention after her death. Despite her online activity, Toya rarely revealed personal aspects of her private life. Her final post before she disappeared showed India with the caption "Evening Walk." The image, calm and unremarkable at the time, later became a powerful symbol of the tragedy, capturing a peaceful moment just before everything changed. As the case drew wider attention, the community remembered Toya as one of its brightest members. Even people who had never met her left flowers at the shelter, wrote messages, and organized vigils in her honor. Her story evoked both grief and unease. If something like this could happen to Toya, it could happen to anyone. Surveillance footage showed that she had stopped to buy groceries at Rusty's Market in Cairns before heading to the beach. She was seen leaving with a bag and walking calmly toward her car, with nothing in her behavior or in those around her appearing unusual. Additional footage from cameras along the Captain Cook Highway, the route to Jade Beach, offered only a limited view. The area immediately surrounding the beach had no surveillance, complicating the investigation. Authorities publicly requested any dash cam recordings from October 21 between 10 a.m. and 11 p.m., particularly footage showing vehicles near the beach turnoff or traveling along the coastal route. Investigators meticulously examined all the footage they received, cross-referencing timestamps and vehicle types. Some videos allowed them to track a few cars entering and leaving the beach area on the day of the incident, including a white SUV. The driver of that vehicle was later identified, interviewed, and cleared as a suspect. However, several other vehicles remained unaccounted for despite public appeals and repeated media releases of video stills. Alongside ongoing surveillance reviews, authorities were actively searching for potential witnesses. Recognizing that others might have been at the beach that day, fishing, walking, or relaxing nearby, officers questioned people who had visited nearby parking areas, gas stations, and convenience stores. Unfortunately, no one reported seeing Toya at the beach that evening, leading investigators to conclude that the crime likely took place in a remote section of the coastline, rarely visited by passers-by. Detectives were also searching for clothing believed to have belonged to Toya. Descriptions of the missing items: athletic leggings, a t-shirt, flip-flops, and a rubber bracelet were shared with the public. Despite extensive searches, none of the items were recovered. Authorities urged local residents to check their properties, ditches, wooded areas, and roadsides for anything unusual. A few tips were received, but none led to the recovery of items conclusively linked to the case. The forensic examination of Toya's body revealed physical evidence suggesting the crime may have involved deliberate aggressive behavior. While law enforcement did not immediately confirm this in public statements, Confidential documents later leaked to the press indicated the possibility of a targeted assault prior to her death, noting injuries to the neck, specific bruising patterns, and the body's positioning. All of this supported the investigative direction. DNA samples were taken from Toya's body and the surrounding area and processed at a forensic laboratory in Brisbane. The results represented a significant step forward in identifying the perpetrator. Unfortunately, no matches were found in existing criminal databases, and the absence of direct evidence or eyewitnesses fueled growing frustration and uncertainty in the media and on social platforms. Speculation and discussion intensified as people shared theories and questioned the actions of those close to Toya. Meanwhile, investigators continued working quietly behind the scenes, hoping for a breakthrough. Police methodically followed every potential lead, tracked routes, verified alibis, and examined social connections. Yet, the identity of the primary suspect had not been disclosed to the public. That name would later come to light through a DNA match, an unexpected disappearance, and the hurried trail left by someone who fled within 24 hours of the crime. Several weeks after Toya Cordingley's tragic death, investigators focused on a man named Rajinder Singh, an Australian citizen of Indian descent. He lived in Innisfail, roughly a 90-minute drive from the crime scene, and worked as a nurse. Although his name was not made public at the time, he quickly became the primary person of interest in the investigation. Several coincidences drew attention to him, including his movements on the day of the incident and his behavior. Notably, cell tower data placed Rajinder near Jetty Beach on October 21, 2018. The day Toya went missing. This timing closely coincided with when Toya is believed to have arrived at the beach and later lost her life. Investigators grew increasingly concerned when Singh suddenly stopped attending work without explanation and abruptly left the home he shared with his wife and sons, abandoning his usual routines. On October 22, 2018, he unexpectedly departed Australia, purchasing a one-way ticket to Delhi and boarding the flight without notifying his employer or acquaintances. He traveled light and the booking had been made in haste. At that point, authorities had no formal charges against him, so border agents had no legal grounds to stop his departure. It was later revealed that he had left behind his wife's passport, personal items, and medical records without offering any explanation to his family. Once DNA samples from the scene were processed, authorities discovered a strong likelihood of a match with samples previously collected from Singh. Additional evidence included footprints near the crime scene that matched Singh, giving investigators grounds to press formal charges. By that time, however, Singh was already in India and attempts to contact him through official channels were unsuccessful. He was not responding to communications and, according to Australian authorities, no longer resided at his registered address. Investigators also examined Singh's medical records, which showed he had sought treatment for hand injuries shortly after Toya's disappearance. These injuries included superficial cuts and bruises which experts believed could have resulted from a physical altercation. Forensic analysis confirmed that Toya had resisted, with her body showing defensive injuries on her arms and face likely sustained during the attack. Singh's actions after fleeing Australia raised further alarm, as he made no effort to settle in one place or register with local authorities. Relatives in India reported that Singh rarely stayed in one place, frequently moving around. He posed as a pilgrim to stay in temples, and reportedly used aliases. Living without official documents allowed him to avoid detection by law enforcement. His wife and sons remained in Australia, and communication with them was sporadic and vague. In one interview, his wife said she was unaware of the details surrounding the incident, but had noticed a change in his behavior. He had become withdrawn and tense in the days before his disappearance. There were also unconfirmed reports of a family dispute shortly before the crime, though no formal evidence of this was included in public records. By the time Rajendra Singh's name was officially released, Australian authorities had compiled a substantial body of evidence, obtained a warrant for his arrest, and submitted an official request to Interpol. Singh was added to an international wanted list. Australia formally requested his extradition from India, but Indian officials stated they needed a completed pre-trial investigation and a full set of supporting materials before taking action. This marked the beginning of an extended period during which Singh evaded capture. Indian authorities occasionally received tips about his location, but attempts to apprehend him were unsuccessful. Meanwhile, in Australia, the case remained a major public concern. Each new mention of the suspect reignited public demand for the government to expedite the extradition process. At the same time, the investigation into Toya Cordingley's case proceeded along two main paths: gathering and analyzing evidence within Australia and coordinating with Indian authorities. Despite slow progress, Australian authorities intensified their efforts. The Queensland government provided additional funding to speed up the investigation. In November 2021, the state's police chief made a rare public announcement. A reward of $1 million Australian dollars was offered for information leading to the suspect's capture. He stressed that solving Toya's case remained a top priority. The reward drew attention in Indian media as the story gained wider coverage. New leads about Singh's possible whereabouts began to surface. Some reports claimed he had been seen in religious communities in Punjab, while others suggested he was hiding with extended family under an assumed identity. Australian authorities shared this information with their Indian counterparts, prompting targeted searches. In November 2022, 4 years after the crime, Singh was finally arrested in Delhi. He was located in the Janakpuri area, moving alone through the city without any identification. When taken into custody, he offered no resistance. Initially, he denied his identity, but after verification, he admitted he was Rajendra Singh, the man who had fled Australia in October 2018. His arrest was officially confirmed and India's Ministry of Home Affairs announced that extradition proceedings had begun. Singh was held in custody in Delhi and provided with legal representation. At his initial court appearance, he declared that he did not wish to be extradited to Australia, citing distrust of the judicial system and concerns about potential bias. This statement triggered a prolonged legal process lasting several months. In response, Australia intensified its diplomatic efforts and enlisted legal experts in international law to assist with the case. Authorities formally compiled all evidence supporting the extradition request, including expert reports and case documents. For the first time since Toya's tragic death, there was a genuine possibility that the suspect would face trial. However, a lengthy process lay ahead involving legal procedures, appeals, and questions about citizenship status. During one interrogation, Rajinder Singh unexpectedly admitted involvement in the crime. The statement was recorded as part of the official case file. Yet just days later, he retracted it, claiming the confession had been made under duress and was false. He insisted he had no connection to Toya's death. In a written statement, Singh argued that the case was more complicated than investigators suggested, presenting a strange theory involving two offenders and two victims. He implied that the events at Jade Beach might have involved someone else entirely and that he had only witnessed another person's actions. Although this version of events had no supporting evidence, it drew the attention of legal representatives and added complexity to the court proceedings. The Indian court agreed to consider his claim, causing further delays. The legal process was repeatedly stalled with hearings rescheduled and the defense raising multiple objections, citing concerns over Singh's rights. Nevertheless, in 2023, an Indian court approved the extradition, ruling that the documents provided by Australian authorities met international standards, and that Singh could be returned to face trial. Final approval came from India's Minister of Home Affairs. With that, arrangements were made for Singh's secure transfer. In November 2023, Rajinder Singh was officially handed over to Australian law enforcement and transported to Queensland. He was received by state police and immediately placed in custody at a secure detention facility. The flight and transfer were conducted under strict confidentiality to prevent leaks or interference. Shortly after his arrival, formal charges were filed against Singh, with the primary accusation being the intentional killing of Toya on October 21, 2018. The court ruled that he would remain in custody without bail, noting that he had previously fled the country and evaded justice for years, making him a clear flight risk. Prosecutors also emphasized the severity of the crime, a violent act resulting in loss of life carried out with notable cruelty. With Singh back in Australia, preparations for trial officially began. Authorities assured the public that the case would proceed transparently in line with national legal standards. Meanwhile, new information from the case files started to emerge, including previously private details about Toya's personal life. One revelation showed she had been in contact with another man named Tyson, a foot care specialist. This detail had not surfaced during the initial investigation and was only discovered months later when investigators examined messages and phone data. It then became apparent that Toya may have been involved in a romantic relationship outside her official partnership. Toya and Tyson had begun communicating just a few weeks before the tragic incident. Initially, their exchanges were casual, consisting of occasional online messages. But over time, the conversations became more personal and emotionally open. Reviewing chat histories, archives, and social media content, investigators found multiple direct and vulnerable messages from Toya. She shared her emotional struggles, doubts about her relationship with Marco Hines, and a desire for change. In one message, she expressed that she no longer felt truly happy and mentioned instances of aggression from her partner. A message sent in mid-October included the words, "He lost it again. I don't feel safe. Maybe it's time to end it." In another more measured message, she shared her desire to go away on her own and take a break from the pressure. While none of the messages directly accused Marco of any crime, they clearly reflected emotional strain and Toya's growing distance from him. She also told Tyson that she was hiding their conversations to avoid triggering another outburst. At first, investigators did not have access to this information. Toya's phone contained missing chat records, and her messaging app did not automatically back up deleted content. It was only through advanced digital forensic analysis that portions of the erased data were recovered. This discovery became a pivotal moment in the investigation, showing that Toya had been keeping parts of her life private from Marco and that her behavior may have appeared distant or suspicious to him. As the new evidence emerged, investigators refocused on Marco Hines, previously treated only as a witness. The discovery of hidden messages and signs of tension in the relationship prompted a review of his alibi and movements on the day Toya disappeared. According to the timeline, Marco was in town when Toya went missing. His whereabouts were partially confirmed through work records and surveillance footage. However, with the new messages in hand, police began scrutinizing those records more closely. A specific window between 2 p.m. and 9 p.m., the period when Toya was believed to be at the beach, became a focus. During those hours, Marco's phone activity dropped noticeably. He stopped responding to messages and later sent a brief text that appeared uncharacteristic of him. Investigators also noted a report that Marco's car had been seen near an exit onto the Captain Cook Highway that same evening, despite his earlier claim that he had remained in central Cairns. These inconsistencies led to another round of questioning. Police summoned Marco to clarify certain details. He confirmed being in the city but struggled to account for gaps in his movements. He denied any involvement in the crime and said he was unaware of Toya's relationship with another man. Although there was insufficient evidence to formally charge him, his answers raised Concerns and justified further scrutiny. Investigators began cross-referencing the movements of everyone mentioned in Toya's communications, requesting phone records, analyzing travel patterns, reviewing surveillance footage, and collecting witness statements. Tyson's whereabouts were confirmed. He had been in another city at the time with no way to be near the scene, and he was officially ruled out as a suspect. With this context, investigators concluded that Toya had been experiencing significant internal conflict in the weeks leading up to her death. These findings were added to the comprehensive investigative file. Although the primary suspect was already in custody, authorities did not dismiss the possibility that others could have been involved. Questions about motives, emotional dynamics, and hidden details remained. 6 years after Toya Cordingley's tragic death, the case finally reached the courtroom. The trial began on July 22, 2024 at the Cairns District Court and immediately attracted widespread public attention. Despite a substantial body of evidence, no verdict has been reached and the hearings were still ongoing. At the start of the trial, the prosecution argued that Singh acted alone, committed the offense with extreme cruelty, and fled the country to evade justice. They suggested that the motive may have involved inappropriate intent that escalated into violence. However, direct evidence supporting such a motive remains limited, leaving that aspect of the case unresolved. During the proceedings, the defense maintained that the case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. Singh's attorneys emphasized that he denies any wrongdoing and claimed his earlier confession in India was coerced and made without proper legal counsel. They also highlighted the absence of eyewitnesses and questioned the interpretation of the DNA evidence, arguing that its presence alone did not conclusively prove his involvement in the crime, adding further complexity was a cryptic statement Singh reportedly made during his extradition process. He later refused to provide details and his legal team sought to have it excluded from the case, arguing it lacked legal relevance. Despite this, the court allowed it to be discussed during testimony. The witness list includes police officers, forensic experts, medical professionals, former co-workers, and individuals who interacted with Singh while he was in India. Key questions, however, remain unanswered. Could someone else have been involved? How significant were the tensions between Toya and her partner, Marco? Why has no clear eyewitness to the crime come forward? These issues continue to fuel public debate, though they are not formally part of the current charges. The hearings are ongoing and a conclusion has yet to be reached. The judge is reviewing all the evidence presented. Questioning continues and forensic experts are still submitting their findings. Toya's parents have attended the proceedings, but have chosen not to make public statements. Their quiet presence in the courtroom underscores the deeply personal toll of the trial. When the court eventually delivers its verdict, it will mark the end of a long and painful journey. For now, the case remains unresolved. There is no confession, no exoneration, only questions, arguments, and the hope that the truth will ultimately emerge through the justice system. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.